This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
You know, I wanted to ask you, your time on Broadway gives you a different perspective on acting than most, right?
You know, yeah, I mean, I think that the theater stuff, you know, for me, you know, I love that. I think that's the big boy stuff. There's no place to hide. You know, it's a much more, again, athletic endeavor. You know, you do the whole show from beginning to end. I think my favorite thing about it is that you get this rehearsal time. And, you know, rehearsal time is just like if you're training for a fight, you know, like you have that time. It's like from the second, you know, you're going to have that fight. You got a certain amount of time that any moment that you're not working, your opponent might be. And I think that, you know, when you sign on to a play, you've got this set amount of time that you're just working on it. And that's really what I love more than anything is the work. I love working on it. I love trying to get it better, surprising myself, scaring the people I'm working with. And, you know, theater really allows you to do that. And then how it evolves kind of like with the audience actually there, you know, it's big boy stuff. There's no second takes. You know, if somebody forgets their line, there's nowhere to hide. And I got a ton, you know, I equated a lot to fighting. I think, you know, the people who do that, stand-up comedians, people who actually get up in front of people are risking something that like there's an inherent risk to doing it in front of a camera. And, you know, it's funny, man, I'm doing this show now with all these guys from the Baltimore Police Department who I love. And some of these guys are just like such, you know, sort of fearless, you know, strong, tough guys, but you know, they're coming on a set and you put a camera in their face and you see that, you know, their pookie gets tight, man, and get all nervous and shit. I'm like, you get nervous? And you see, man, it's like, that's great to put yourself in a situation where you can overcome something. I think that's so beautiful. And so there's something about doing it on film too, but doing it in front of, you know, 1,000 people in a theater, that's a different deal. And I got a ton of respect for anybody who does that.
Do you feel like Broadway was that step to the big time then? Like,
you know, man, theater for me, that's just kind of always, I never really had any desire to do anything on camera. I never, you know, when I was in New York and doing theater, I had a theater company. I mean, when my wife met me, I was doing plays where there was more people on stage than in the audience. I mean, it was not looking, you know, good, but I loved it. And she believed in me. And that's kind of all I really needed. But I think that, like, you know, what I saw was, you know, in New York and the New York stage, I'm sure there's things that are equivalent with wrestling. You couldn't really get a real good part in the New York stage unless you had a recognizable face from TV or movies. So that's the only reason I ended up going to California and trying to get in TV and movies, is because I wanted to get back on stage. But then I just got so darn busy and things just kind of, so like I have not gotten to get back on stage nearly as much as I would like. But that's definitely, you know, that's definitely in the cards for the future.
Right. You just talked about that. You ended up creating your own theater company called Feuds. Mm-hmm. What was the inspiration for that, and how did that come to be?
You know, that was it was a group of youngsters. You know, when I was first starting, it was a group of young people that I met. This one guy in particular, Josh Chambers, I'll tell you, Kurt, man, he was, he's the best artist that I've ever gotten to work with. You know, he was almost like too big of a genius. I don't know if you've ever known someone like this, but he's almost was too big of a genius for the world. You know, he was a prodigy guitarist. He would write all his own music. He would write plays. He was just sort of nonstop. He ended up going over to Europe and directing these huge operas. And, you know, sadly, he died this past year. I was at his funeral. Young man, he died way too early. You know, he just kind of made some tough decisions and his life started to spiral. Again, it was almost like his mind and his heart were too big for this world. But, you know, for a long time, you know, what we were doing, it was a group of young actors, man. We lived in Bushwick, Brooklyn back in the 90s when, you know, we'd be in rehearsal. We'd be hearing people getting killed right on our block. You know, anytime anybody would have to go to the subway, you know, we'd walk in a group. It was not Bushwick like what people think it is now. It was, and, you know, there's 12 of us living there for $400 a month, you know, and we just put on shows. We put them on in DC and New York, wherever we could do it. And it was scrappy and it was humble. But that's really where I feel like I made my bones because, you know, I got to do things, you know, it was this guy wanted to make theater that was like professional sports that had the same stakes as professional wrestling or he would do things like, I mean, crazy shit, like, throw bags of crickets into the audience or have lobsters and dogs running around. I mean, it was just like insane stuff, and all done like kind of beautifully and elegantly, but it was completely wacko and insane at the same time. But it really shaped a lot for me. When I work with directors now in Hollywood and they're like, hey, I just really want you to push the envelope, go for, I'm like, brother, you don't even know how far, like, I'll do whatever. Yeah, there ain't nothing I'm going to try, and I'm really grateful for those guys that I got to have that kind of sort of experience, and I think as a young artist, that's important,
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.